Okay, so today I want to talk about another role in a narcissistic family environment, and this could be if there's a narcissistic parent or a sibling, or both. But this is very common, and this is the role of the enabler. So the enabler is the person or persons that support the narcissist and never call them out on their terrible behavior or the harm they're inflicting on their victims. And the enablers are fully manipulated and controlled by the narcissist. And it's typically through emotion or, other things like, even money. I mean, I've seen it, where a narcissist will just literally just give resources to people, and that is another way they manipulate them to keep them on their side. But it's really somebody. From what I've observed two situations where enablers are playing roles to support these narcissists. Number one, it's in a relationship like a parent, a husband and a wife. One of them is a narcissist, and the other one is an enabler to the narcissist, and then is providing the enabler. Then in that relationship is then providing support to the narcissist. The other circumstance I've observed are parents who are enabling, say, like a narcissistic child who is wreaking havoc in a family unit. And so those are the two that I've observed. So I have experience with a narcissistic parent and then an enabling parent. And I think the narcissistic parent and the enabling parent is more dangerous as opposed to a narcissistic child being enabled by a narcissistic parent. Now, my reasoning behind this is that when a child is exhibiting signs of being a narcissist, having narcissistic behavior, the detriment and the problems they're causing, are obviously to the members of the family and the community and people around them, which is bad, but it's not as detrimental as an adult causing psychological, emotional, and even physical harm on a child. So that's the worst. Any crimes against children are the absolute worst. And that's why, in my opinion, an enabler of a narcissistic parent that is allowing abuse to a child is just as guilty as the narcissistic parent committing the abuse. And that needs to be, those people need to be held responsible. And that's really where society is letting children down. They're not holding these people responsible. And ultimately, society then bears the brunt of these narcissistic environments that then are causing children to grow up in these emotionally, psychologically, physically abusive environments. And then in turn, that child then becomes a person and now is in society wreaking havoc. And that's this vicious cycle that is continually operating. So really, the way that these enablers support the narcissist is they're receiving from the parent side of things, from what I grew up and what I have observed. The enabler, in my situation, my dad, he's trauma bonded to my mother. So he himself experienced narcissistic abuse, and then from the result of not dealing with his own issues and problems that he experienced in childhood, he then began to fall into a trap of relating to people that would abuse him in those ways. So he naturally gravitated towards my mother, and it was a good fit because she's a narcissist, and then she could do her narcissistic witchcraft on him and, abuse him mentally, psychologically, and he felt comfortable in that because that's how he learned to love people and relate to other people in his life. So he's receiving something from the narcissist, and then in turn, he then enables her. He lets her run wild and do all her narcissism and abuse to everyone around her, all the relationships. And so that, there's a give and take. And so she's going to, perpetuate her narcissistic story, her delusional story to the enabler to just justify the behavior more and more. And, ultimately, the enabler is just going to help the narcissist continue on as long as it takes, unless something can trigger the enabler to see clearly, which I attempted to. I thought that a parent's love for a child went beyond a parent's feeling and need for whatever emotionally bonding that they have with their husband or wife. That's what I thought. So that was my tactic to try to prevail through, try to get through to my dad to tell him, listen, this behavior is unacceptable, and we have to hold this person accountable for their behavior, because it's not right. You can't be treating people this way because it causes damage and harm. And I was trying to explain, the harm and damage it caused in my life, and how it almost resulted in me dying, from drinking and driving all the time and just being a drunk. But that it kind of worked. But the problem is that he's so manipulatable. The narcissist can just hammer him, and then he just flips right back, and then he's fully under control of the spell, of her spell. And then if she feels threatened that her enabler, maybe is starting to see, and the tide is starting to turn, boom, she goes nuclear and goes in this nuclear mode, and then really starts scrutinizing and demonizing and attacking the people who are exposing her. And so that's currently what we're living in, is assault from the narcissist, because we're living, my wife and my kids, we're living on their property in their guest house, and we moved there before we realized that my mother's a raging narcissist, and so we're navigating it. But really the only thing currently that's working is just giving her little things, like my wife bakes cookies, or like a card or some flowers or just something. So that's been kind of calming things down. But anyway, and there's always some drama that's brewing, so I'm awaiting that. So those types of enablers, the parents that are enabling the other parent to abuse the children, that's the absolute worst, and they need to be held accountable. So the other enabler, a parent who is enabling their child to do narcissistic abuse in their community and then within the family, I can sympathize with that, because that's a hard position, because that is truly a parent's love for their child, and you will always see your child as that little baby, that you cared for and brought up and brought to this world. And I think it's hard to really see your child as being, bad and not a good person. So I can understand the parents enabling their child to do narcissistic behavior. And I mean, really, the remedy to that is, it's probably setting healthy boundaries with that child, and thinking, reflecting on what led that child to become a narcissist. And I'll talk about that more. I've deduced what I feel, how these narcissists are created throughout society. But those are the two main enablers. And you could say too, I was an enabler when I was dating narcissistic women. Before I was able to understand my narcissistic abuse and that trauma bonding program that I got into. I was guilty of enabling these narcissistic women in my life that were just abusing me. I was trauma bonding to them, and they were kind of wreaking havoc throughout society. I remember I had one girlfriend who we were together for maybe 5 years. Anyway, the whole time we're together, she had another boyfriend in another state. I didn't even know it. We lived together. And, not only is she wreaking havoc in my life, because, intuitively, something's up, but you can't really put your finger on it. But then the other guy that she's got on the line in another state, she's wreaking havoc in his life. And actually, so I will tell you a quick story about how all that ended up. So the gal and I are living together, several years, out of 3 or 4 or 5 years, whatever. She decides she's going to take a trip back to where she's from. So she leaves, and I'm going to be gone for a couple weeks, whatever. She calls and is like, I'm not coming back. You need to pack up all my stuff and bring it to my parents' house. And I was like, fuck, man. Like, what? Are you kidding me? But, I don't know. And of course, I was this total soy boy, just like yes man to these abusive narcissistic women. And so, of course, I was like, okay, whatever you say. But then she's like, oh, but I still love you. So she, kept me on the hook. So what ended up happening was she is at home, and then she flies to the state where this dude is that she's had on the line the whole time we're together. And she, gets with him. But she quickly realizes, the dude is kind of a loser. He's like a drunk, and, he has no money, and obviously these are shallow, vapid people. So she bails him, gets her own place, and then starts finding her next victim when she finds this guy who owns a restaurant, and she gets a job there, and she quickly latches onto him, and he has money, and he's flying her to Bali so they can do yoga vacations, and everything is so amazing. And then in the meantime, she's got me on the line calling me all the time. Oh, I love you so much, and I'm living here and I'm on my own or whatever, just trying to keep me going. She has the restaurant guy going, and then she has the other guy going that she decided was kind of a loser. But what ends up happening is the loser guy loses his mind and goes psycho and attacks her new boyfriend, and somehow he gets my phone number and calls me and is like, dude, I gotta warn you, and he tells me everything, and that's how I figured all this out. And I told him, I was like, man, yeah, I don't know, that's crazy. But anyway, so he loses his mind, attacks the guy, they get a restraining order against him, and it was like, dude, none of that needed to happen. If this narcissistic girl could have just been truthful with people, just tell me straight up, I don't want to be with you, I'm leaving. Okay, I can accept that. People break up, it's okay. But this whole thing where she was leading everybody on, and then so fast forward 3 years, I've developed a gnarly drinking problem because of these unresolved kind of issues. She's kept me on the line the whole time. Her whole world crumbled, what she thought was going to work, and so she comes back to me and convinces me to take her back. And of course, I'm this soy boy rollover yes man, with no balls, fall victim to her stupid, narcissistic story. And so I take her back, and anyway, I'm not going to tell you how it ends, but obviously I made it out, but I'll reveal more in another video. But anyway, so that was a situation where I was an enabler to this narcissistic girl who was wreaking havoc throughout all these people's lives. So the three enablers: the parents are enabling their children, the people in a relationship with a narcissist, couples, and then the parent enabling another narcissistic parent, wreaking havoc on the children's lives. So those are the three that I'm familiar with, and I hope this helped. Anyway, thanks for watching.